service of the First Church in Boston, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Back Bay. First Church offers is broadcasted each Sunday morning from 11 a.m. to noon here at 88.9 FM WERS, a broadcast service of Emerson College. Reverend Edmund Robinson is minister of First Church, and his sermon today is titled The American Creed. To begin today's service, you are hearing music director and organist Gigi Mitchell-Polasco perform several of the concert variations on the Star-Spangled Banner composed by Dudley Buck.
Good morning, and welcome to the First Church in Boston's worship service this 20th day of February 2022. I am Edmund Robinson, the interim minister continuing the worship tradition of this church, which dates back almost 400 years. Because of the COVID virus, our Paul Rudolph designed sanctuary here in Boston's Back Bay is closed except to worship participants today. But we welcome those joining us live streaming on Facebook and those who are joining on WERS-FM, the radio station of Emerson College. We hope those joining off premises will find the time to visit us in person some Sunday in, I hope, the near future when we can resume in-person worship. Today, in honor of Abraham Lincoln, we consider the American Creed, and our opening words are from the great transcendentalist and abolitionist Unitarian minister Theodore Parker. In an 1851 sermon, he said these words, which were later taken up by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I'm sure it bends toward justice. Our opening hymn is number 190, Light of Ages and of Nations.
Welcome again to the broadcast of today's worship service on WERS and Facebook. I'm your announcer, Vivian Borick. The audio engineer is Craig Hildreth, and the videographer is Masha Stepanova. Jacqueline Schwab, pianist, is today's guest musician. She will perform a work by American composer J. Unger, Ashokan Farewell. The anthem is From Sea to Shining Sea by Samuel Ward. The First Church Choir will sing several hymns from the Unitarian Universalist Hymn Book, Singing the Living Tradition. These include the sermon hymn 287, Faith of the Larger Liberty. To close the service, Gigi Mitchell-Velasco will perform additional selections from what we heard as a prelude, concert variations on Star Spangled Banner.
You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. We now proceed to the First Church in Boston affirmation in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Please be seated. I have two announcements. One is that there will be a Zoom coffee hour after this service. If you can find your e-news, it would have the Zoom link for you to get on and engage in lively discussion of what's happened to the service and just get to know each other a little bit better. The second is that the reopening committee has met and issued its recommendations that the First Church resume in-person worship services beginning next Sunday, February 27th, but to continue maintaining social distances and wearing masks. This proposal will be considered by the Standing Committee at its meeting this Tuesday night at 7 on Zoom. All members are welcome to attending the Standing Committee meeting. Links can be found in the e-news. Our responsive reading is number 586, which is found in the hymnal. It's several quotes from Abraham Lincoln. As labor is the common burden of our race, so the effort of some to shift their share of the burden onto the shoulders of others is the great durable curse of the race. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy. Our alliance is in our love for liberty. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as a heritage of all people in all lands, everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and we have planted the seeds of despotism at our own doors. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves and cannot long retain it. Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world? Let us have faith that right makes right, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. Now I want to invite you into a time of prayer and meditation, invite you to get comfortable in your pews or your whatever you're sitting on at home, and pay attention to your breath, in and out, in and out, in and out. As you find things holding on in your body, let them go. Pay attention to your neck, your cranial muscles, Let them relax. Let go of time itself. Be fully present in this moment with these people scattered all over the country, all over the world, listening to the sound of my voice, going through a moment which will not come back in quite this way ever again. In the silence, I invite you to contemplate what you think of as the basic principles that govern the nation of the United States of America. Whether we live up to those words or whether we have a long way to go. Amen. And now our anthem, which will be partly the choir and partly myself. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We have met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Worship service of First Church in Boston, Unitarian Universalist, on WERS 88.9 FM, Emerson College, Boston. We are located at the corner of Marlborough and Berkeley Streets in the Back Bay, just minutes away from the Arlington Street subway stop on the Green Line.
We're considering today the American Creed. Let us read an excerpt from the great poet Langston Hughes in his Let America Be America Again. In every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed these early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America shall be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft, the stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Our sermon hymn is number 287, Faith of the Larger Liberty.
Service of First Church in Boston, Unitarian Universalist at 88.9 FM WERS, a broadcast service of Emerson College. We are located at the corner of Berkeley and Marlborough in an easy-to-spot contemporary building designed 50 years ago by Paul Rudolph.
The American Creed. Abraham Lincoln was born 213 years ago and 10 days. It is said that his favorite riddle was this: if you call a tail a leg, how many legs does a dog have? The answer is 4, because calling a tail a leg doesn't make it one. Lincoln was one of the finest lawyers this country ever produced, and he was well familiar with the many ways people have of bending truth. I wonder what he would think of the situation today where the party he represented has dug itself in behind the lie that its candidate won the last presidential election. Every swing state was contested and all the challenges failed, but the candidate has never conceded, and the litmus test of party loyalty has now become, a year afterwards, whether one will join that candidate in his brazen refusal to acknowledge the truth. Before that, many people dug themselves in behind the lie that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. We hold these truths to be self-evident, said the document which tried to justify our separation from our mother country. And it was that document that Lincoln reached back to in trying to articulate a national purpose behind the horrible war which had sucked in the whole country. We honor those words Lincoln composed to dedicate the cemetery at Gettysburg because we recognize them as a definition of national purpose. He said the nation was, quote, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, end quote. These words are high-sounding, but are they true? How could they be true when they were written and voted on by slaveholders? Lincoln's words at Gettysburg are the closest thing we have to a national creed. Now, that's a peculiar statement for a UU minister to make because we are a non-creedal denomination. We liberated ourselves from having to recite doctrine, and we accept that people can differ about whether there is a God or life after death or an overall purpose in the universe. Is a creed a good thing or a bad thing? I have found great insight and stability in reading a recent book by Jill Lepore, a Harvard historian and writer for The New Yorker, entitled These Truths. It is a one-volume history of the United States from Columbus's landing to the present day. In it, Professor Lepore looks at the values contained in the Declaration of Independence and how these ideals have intersected with the realities on the ground as the country developed. To summarize a very complex and winding story, Lepore demonstrates that what the Declaration calls self-evident truths have never been fully accepted, let alone implemented, at any point in our history. So let's go back a century before Lincoln and ask, how did the Declaration get written? The Continental Congress had passed Virginia Delegate Henry Lee's resolution for independence, but wanted a complete declaration with justifications. And they appointed a 5-member committee to draft it. 3 of the members were Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams. Jefferson was selected to give it the first try. He did not write on a blank slate. George Mason had authored a Virginia Declaration of Rights 2 years before, but Jefferson improved on it, and the committee improved on Jefferson's first draft. The heart of the Declaration is not the laundry list of grievances against the king, but the theory of government contained in the second paragraph. It is there that Jefferson makes the case that if a government meets certain conditions, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. The rest of the document consists of facts making the case that King George's actions justify the separation, that is, they meet the tests set forth in the second paragraph. Jefferson's first draft read as follows, quote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable, that all men are created equal and independent, that from that equal creation they derive rights inherent and inalienable, among which are the preservation of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these ends, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any government shall become destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government," unquote. Now, this language was later amended in a way I will get to in a moment. But Jill Lepore identifies in it 3 basic ideas which made it into the final draft and which formed the basis of the American idea today: political equality, natural rights, and popular sovereignty. Political equality, that all are created equal. Natural rights, those rights which accrue because of nature and therefore can't be taken away. and popular sovereignty, the notion that all power proceeds from the will of the people. Jill Lepore's fascinating book traces these three ideas through the history of the nation. But when Franklin saw Jefferson's draft, he took his pen and scratched out "sacred and undeniable" and suggested that these truths were instead self-evident. Franklin's amendment was adopted, but Professor Lepore points out that the difference between the two ways of stating it was, quote, more than a quibble. Truths that are sacred and undeniable are God-given and divine, the stuff of religion. Truths that are self-evident are laws of nature, empirical and observable, the stuff of science. This divide has nearly rent the Republic apart, unquote. Remember that these patriots were rethinking government at about the same time that some ministers within New England Congregationalism were rethinking religion. Those ministers sought a religion which was compatible with reason, which liberated Jesus from being the Son of God, and treated the Bible as a humanly written book which could be studied as any other text. This movement was later called Unitarianism. Both Unitarianism and the American Revolution took place within the larger intellectual context of the Enlightenment. One of the big questions considered by Enlightenment thinkers was, what is truth, or how can we know anything? There were two major schools of philosophy in those days. The idealists, such as Descartes and Leibniz, believed that some knowledge is inborn in the mind. The opposing school was the empiricists, Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, who believed that all we can know, we have to learn through our five senses. The empiricists were eternal skeptics. Nothing could be taken as true unless there was evidence for it. Empiricism became the basic attitude of the discipline of natural philosophy, or as we would call it today, science. Truth in science is not based on faith or authority or innate knowledge, but on evidence. But of course, the Founding Fathers were not expounding science, but a political philosophy. When Franklin struck out Jefferson's sacred and undeniable and inserted self-evident, he shifted this frame of reference in favor of the empiricists. But did he thereby weaken the three fundamental values asserted? Professor Lepore thinks the significance of this change can be overblown. Quote, the real dispute isn't between Jefferson and Franklin, each attempting in his way to reconcile faith and reason, as many have tried both before and since. The real dispute is between these truths and the course of events. Does American history prove these truths, or does it belie them? Unquote. If the question is the verdict of history itself, I think the trial is still in progress. The jury is out. It is easy to convict the Founding Fathers of arrant hypocrisy, since Jefferson and many of the signers of the Declaration were slaveholders. They didn't really believe every person had a natural right to liberty because they didn't grant that to their slaves. They weren't about to grant to Native Americans any hint of the kind of self-determination or popular sovereignty that they were declaring was the natural right of an English subject against the king. And they treated neither indigenous people nor African people nor women as equal to white male Europeans. If the ideals expressed in the Declaration were really self-evident truths, wouldn't the founders had to emancipate slaves, liberate women, make a fair accommodation with the natives whose land they were occupying? Jefferson did not say, we'll start from the assumption of equality as a matter of argument. He said it as fact. He said these are the truths they really obtain, and the proof is, well, we don't need any proof because the truth of these propositions is self-evident. That is, the evidence for the truth of the propositions is lying there in plain sight, like the purloined letter in Edgar Allan Poe's story. The problem with this line of argument is that if the truth of these propositions were really self-evident, they would never have been disputed in prior or subsequent history. Let's look at that. Certainly history prior to the American Revolution doesn't show any consensus about the truth of these three propositions. The law and practice up to that time did not recognize the equality of all people, but rather made distinctions among them on the basis of race, wealth, bloodlines, privilege, sex, etc. There was no recognition that everyone had natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so far from recognizing sovereignty in the will of the people, the dominant political philosophy of the day before the revolution was the divine right of kings. And history after the Declaration also fails to record a consensus that the truths set out there are self-evident. The persistence of slavery alone is powerful witness to the disputed nature of these truths. As the conflict between pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces reached its fever pitch in the 1850s, there was a lively debate about whether the signers of the Declaration had even considered African Americans to be people. And the Dred Scott decision of 1858 certainly did not see them as fully people in a political or moral sense. Throughout the period before the Civil War, slavery's defenders defended on the grounds that all people were not created equal. If the proposition that Jefferson said was self-evident were really so, it would not be open for debate. But in the South, and even in the United States Congress for decades, it was the morality of slavery which was not in dispute. Really, the pro-slavery powers had enough clout in Congress that any question of the morality of slavery could not be debated there. When Lincoln went to Gettysburg in the middle of the bloody contest, he reached back to the truths of the Declaration of Independence, saying the nation was conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The horrible war in which the nation was ensnared, he called a great testing ground as to whether, quote, any nation so conceived and so dedicated would long endure. And of course, from that conflict, because of that conflict, slavery was ended. It was not ended because slavery's defenders suddenly woke up to the fact that it was wrong, much less that the wrongness was self-evident. Slavery ended because the Union won the war militarily. And part of the strategy for winning that war was the Emancipation Proclamation and the self-emancipation of slaves which followed. No, those truths put into the Declaration of Independence so many years ago are not self-evident. They could not have been so hotly disputed if they were indisputable. And they're not self-executing either. They require a constant struggle. They're debated. That's why they're alive in our consciousness today. These truths, equality, rights to life, liberty, and happiness, popular sovereignty, are simply not self-proving. But like the religious doctrines expressed in Orthodox creeds, they are neither true nor false in any final sense. Rather, they are as true as we make them. They are transcendent ideals, dreams, if you will, and they have never been and will probably never be fully realized in American political life and culture. But they stand as a kind of goalpost towards which we struggle. Contrast the Gettysburg Address with the Cornerstone speech. Shortly after the secession of the Southern states, Alexander Stephens, the Vice President of the Confederacy, gave a speech in which he explained that the Confederate States were founded on an assumption of inequality because the equality set forth in the Declaration of Independence was fundamentally wrong. Quote, the foundations of our new government are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery's subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth, end quote. But Stephens is saying that the idea of equality was false does not make it so, any more than Jefferson saying it was self-evident proves it was true. Calling a dog's tail a leg does not make it one. Its truth was bolstered by the military result of the Civil War and the constitutional amendments, which followed that war. But after the war, that truth was challenged by the decades of Jim Crow and by the resistance to the Civil Rights Movement, all the racial oppression that we've suffered since the Civil War. And it is challenged today in the obscene rates of mass incarceration, in the unequal distribution of wealth, in restrictions on the right to vote, in the increased vulnerability that people of color experience in dealing with police. In 2008, this country elected its first president of Black African descent. Many people saw that as a symbolic assertion of the truth of the proposition that all were created equal. But some could not accept that and set about to prove that the new president's election was based on a lie, for he was not actually born in the United States. Though that president was reelected, the uneasiness with him grew in certain quarters. And the person who most prominently denied his legitimacy won the presidency the next time. With this history, is it any wonder that we have no overriding national consensus on what is truth and what is a lie? On this Lincoln anniversary, can we find in our founding document any transcendent values on which all Americans can agree? I don't see the roadmap right now to such a place, but I don't give up hope that we might ultimately get there. Now, as far as we know, Abraham Lincoln belonged to no church. But among all our presidents down to our present one, he grappled most publicly with real religious questions. He was a crafty and subtle writer and astute politician. And it is hard to guess his real ideological leanings. But Garry Wills, who wrote a book on the Gettysburg Address, concluded that Lincoln was most accurately described as a transcendentalist. His law partner, William Herndon, read The Transcendentalist and was fond of quoting our own Unitarian forebear, Theodore Parker, as Lincoln used Parker's phrase of government of the people, by the people, and for the people to close out his oration at Gettysburg. Theodore Parker belonged to the second generation of Transcendentalists. Transcendentalists are philosophical idealists. They know that a statement like all men are created equal is an ideal which will always be realized imperfectly in the real world. We have fallen short and will continue to fall short of its full promise. But the ideal once stated has a power of its own, a power which brought on the terrible swift sword of war, which set brother against brother and buried the flower of a generation in graveyards throughout the South. It was a terrible price to pay, but it rid the nation of the practice of slavery, if not of its long moral stain. Theodore Parker, who had worked for decades to bring about the abolition of slavery, did not live to see the inception of the Civil War or its outcome. But he had said of the abolitionist cause the words I read a few moments ago: I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I'm sure it bends toward justice. I'm sure it bends toward justice. How can anyone be sure? We have the yawning gap between ideal and reality. It was present when the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was present with us through the Revolutionary War and the 19th century political and military struggles over whether slavery would be expanded into new states. Lincoln states at Gettysburg that America was dedicated to the proposition that all were created equal. But in the next sentence, he said that the Civil War tested whether any nation so conceived and so dedicated could long endure. Ironically, he said this as he was dedicating a portion of a battlefield to serve as a cemetery. Far from a self-evident proposition, this dedication could be dislodged by cannons and muskets. So is this essential part of the American creed true or false? Is it like the fifth leg of a dog, that calling it true doesn't make it true? I think the reality is more subtle than that. Statements such as Joseph Biden won the presidential election of 2020 or Barack Obama was born in Hawaii are true or false in obvious ways. Evidence can be garnered and jurors or officials can weigh them and come up with a verdict of true or false. But the proposition that all people are created equal is not the same kind of statement. You have to define equal. Equal in what? Define created. By whom? And define the criteria by which you could tell. I believe that even if these parameters are defined with the utmost care, you still have a proposition which is fundamentally different from a statement of fact. It is more a statement of value and belongs to the province of ethics rather than science. It is like the first principle of Unitarian Universalism. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. unquote. We don't thereby say as a fact that every person has some unspecified quantity of worth and dignity. We agree as a matter of ethics that we will treat them as having essential worth and dignity, and that we want to live in a society where the worth and dignity of every person is affirmed and promoted. We pledge to do our part. But amid these niceties of logic and reason, we have these yawning gaps where whole classes of people are caught on the horns of inequality. If equality comes when everyone believes in it and acts as if it is there, we certainly haven't reached that point yet. A good illustration is Langston Hughes' poem, which recognizes how large is the gulf between the ideal and the lived experience of a black person. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Is the American creed true in saying that all are created equal? We, the American people, black, white, immigrant, native, women, men, queer, straight, gay, lesbian, trans, non-binary, we answer this question every day by living it. What are you going to do to make it true? Amen.
We have now come to the offertory part of the service. If you'd like to support the work of this church with a donation, please make a check out to First Church Boston and mail it to 66 Marlborough Street, 02116, or use text messaging on your smartphone. Just text the dollar amount to the number 617-917-5610. You will receive confirmation by email. And now, Ashokan Farewell with Jackie Schwab, piano.
I invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn is number 153, This Is My Song. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. The more you live this proposition, the more you make it true. Let us resolve to make equality a reality for all who live under the American creed. Amen.
You have been listening to the weekly worship service of First Church in Boston, Unitarian Universalist, this year celebrating the 50th anniversary of our contemporary Back Bay building designed by Paul Rudolph. If you would like more information about programs, services, or membership at First Church, please visit the website firstchurchboston.org or send an email to office@firstchurchboston.org. You are now listening to Gigi Mitchell Velasco perform selections from the concert variations on Star Spangled Banner, composed by Dudley Buck. Next Sunday, February 27, 2022, First Church will once again open doors for worship at 11 o'clock. Reverend Robinson's title will be A Blessing from Africa. Please join us then and every Sunday at 11 o'clock here at 88.9 FM WERS, a broadcast service of Emerson College in Boston. I'm your announcer, Vivian Borak. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll now return our radio listeners to Emerson College and the studios of WERS. The worship service for First Church in Boston, recorded for Facebook on February 20, 2022, has concluded.
It doesn't get any better than that. Music